Hello and welcome back to Frogboy X1 Gaming. I'm Andrew and today I want to do my 7 month, it's like 7 months, almost 8 months since I've switched over to AMD. And now I've actually had the opportunity to try an entry level AMD GPU, which is the 7600 XT. This is the 16 gigabyte model. Very nice looking card. All of these cards that I've bought are from XFX. So you have a very nice design when it comes to the XFX models. These look really good. This model here does not have any RGB, so it's just the matte black finish all around it. This card looks very, very nice. I really like that. The only thing I don't really care for is the stupid looking stickers on the front of the fans. Like, I don't really care for them stickers. It's on all of them, but man, when you get to like the back plate on these things, these are very, very nice looking GPUs. They sit really nice, very quiet. There's no noise from the fans, anything like that. I haven't overclocked any of these or done anything like that. They all run at the very stock settings, stock fan speed, stock everything, and they are freaking quiet, and they're really awesome. So that's the 7600 XT right there. And then right here in the back, we have the 7800 XT, which is a little bit more different. This one has more of a silver tone over matte black. This one here does have RGB in the lights. You will see the RGB come on right there. The back plate on this one is going to be silver, and it's going to have more of a ribbed pattern to it. Nice chunk of steel. Very solid construction. The front plate is plastic, as this one here also has the three fans. All three of the cards that I have, they all have the two 8-pin for power supply on them, and they all have a BIOS switch that you can switch from quiet to whatever, boosted or performance or something. I've only tried the stock option on all three of these cards. I have not went out of my way to do any of that other stuff. As you can see, the size difference of the 7800 XT versus the 7600 XT, it does add a significant amount of space to that. It is a little bit heavier, bigger GPU, but at the end of the day, you are getting more power. Now, I want to another cool little touch that the 7600 XT has. It says Radeon right there on the front. Very, very cool. I love the way these GPUs look, man. Like, I am absolutely in love with the FXX brand and quality. These GPUs look extremely good. They look, I mean, they're beefy. They're beefy. And let me just mention, I bought that MSI 4070 Ventus 3, and the construction of that thing versus this entry level $350 GPU, this here wins like massively. Like, this card right here, this construction of this card is so much nicer than that MSI thing that's almost twice the price, and that thing just feels like it's all plastic. And but then again, that one only needs the one 8-pin. So I mean, like, over engineering something like that when that 4070 runs pretty fine. Like, that 4070 runs pretty fine. It gets the job done. It does everything you would want it to do. But I personally am more. I'm more excited about the AMD brand. I just am. There's no way to like sugarcoat that. I've bought plenty of the Nvidia GPUs. I've bought plenty of the AMD GPUs now, and I feel out of this whole stack, I feel like the AMD stack pretty much hits those points pretty well for me, and it's pretty consistent across all three GPUs. Now, if I was, and then we also have the 7900 XT, which is back in the PC right now. I've been playing around with that, and that's kind of the idea for this today. I wanted to rate these three GPUs. The 7900 XT from XFX, a little bit bigger than the 7800 XT, but it does come with its very own support bracket that is absolutely incredible. It's got the 4 screws on the side. It comes up, swings right across the, you know, the lower bottom part of the GPU, kind of centered just above, kind of just about right here along these 3 fans, and then it mounts to the very front plate of the GPU itself, and it gives that GPU so much freaking support. Gosh, this thing does not want to work with me today. It gives that GPU so much support in the sag, so it doesn't sag at all. It just feels super solid the whole time. Now, I wanna give you guys like the best recommendation out of these 3 GPUs that I possibly can, and as somebody that really does value visuals, I do value new tech. Like, don't get me wrong, I like ray tracing. I think it's absolutely incredible, and it is going to be such an amazing feature when it's actually ready and available for all gamers to use without crippling your performance. I do think that there is a place in gaming for ray tracing. I just don't think that time is now. So paying extra money for a feature that you can barely use, to me, that just doesn't make sense. It's not that I'm broke or anything like that. It's just that I haven't gotten a good enough experience for the money I've invested into ray tracing yet, to where it's like, ooh, I don't know if this is worth continuing to buy. And the experience that I get from the AMD side of things, I'm like, okay, so I leave all of that on the table to get a little bit of ray tracing that only kind of works if you use other things for it. It just doesn't make sense to me. That's just kind of the way my mind works, man. Like, I grew up poor and having to like really, you know, scrape together money and all of that kind of stuff just to get like the one thing that I liked. And, you know, over the years, I've learned my lesson when it comes to like overhyped products and stuff like that. Like, I have. There's a lot of hype out there for Nvidia. There's not I kind of think it's just, I think there's a little bit too much hype for Nvidia. It is a good product. They do make good products, but I think they're a little bit overhyped, and I think they're a little bit, and they're definitely a little bit overpriced, at least in comparison to what you get on the AMD side for the power. I don't have a problem with the price on either GPUs. To be completely honest with you, I just feel like, and this is my thing, like coming at it, it's like, okay, so the Nvidia card, $600. The AMD card, $500. The AMD card outperforms the $600 card in every metric except for ray tracing. And DLSS and FSR, that is 100% subjective. Your preference could be different than mine. So that doesn't even, that DLSS and FSR, they're not even a factor in my decision for buying a GPU, period. That's the end of the discussion on that. Like, I do not factor in upscalers when I'm making a GPU decision, and you shouldn't either. You shouldn't either, because you could potentially be leaving a lot on the table. Now, there's also games, my friends. There's also games. We can sit here and try to say that we're only going to play the 5 ray tracing games that are on Nvidia for the rest of our lives, but we all know that's not true. AMD cards tend to have better performance for Ubisoft games most of the time. They tend to have better performance for Call of Duty and other shooter games, and you know, it's so there's like games that are gonna run good on AMD, and there's games that are gonna run bad on AMD, as well as, you know, the same can be said for Nvidia. And that's something that you really have to look into, you know, long term. You know, what games are you going to play the most? What experiences are going to be good for you? What are going to be bad for you? And that's the way I'm kind of looking at it and seeing things. And maybe that's why I like AMD better, because a lot of the games that I like to play heavily favor the AMD platform. The AMD platform is also used for both the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. So usually your games are going to just be a little bit, I feel like they're going to translate a little better over to the AMD side. Whereas Nvidia, they do really good with those. They do really good with a lot of titles too. Like, I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that Nvidia makes bad products. They don't. They're not making bad products. They're just a little bit, I don't know, man. I feel like, in my opinion, I feel like you get a better bang for your buck when you go with AMD. And there's a lot of fear out there over AMD, and I get it because I felt the same way before I bought this 7900 XT. I had so much anxiety. I'm not even joking. Like my anxiety was through the roof. I was like, oh my gosh, dude. I'm gonna spend $800 on this card. Everybody says it's worse than Nvidia, and Nvidia is not really that great in my eyes right now. Like I'm already frustrated with Nvidia, and then boom, I got the AMD card, and like look at me now, 7 months later, everybody calls me a fanboy because I like AMD, and that's crazy to me. That is absolutely crazy that people would go out of their way to be insulting and rude and just downright like for what, man? It doesn't make any sense to me, and I get caught up in it and I push back, and then it just leads me into a dark space that I don't want to be. But the overall experience that I'm getting from AMD, absolutely, absolutely, in my eyes, is better than what I've gotten from Nvidia for more money. So, all right. Now I want to make my recommendation, but first I want to explain a little bit more about these AMD cards and the way I see the progression from the low end up to the higher end, and what that means for you and how you can make the best decision in choosing one of these GPUs from the AMD stack. If we start with the 7600 XT, this card performs very well. Like I said, so far, like in every game that I've tested, we're about 99% hit rate for 1080p over 60 frames a second. Like we're doing really good without using like upscaler or any of that. So in its bracket for 1080p, it is probably the strongest of the three in terms of their bracket so far to date. I've played multiple games, multiple new games. I still have a ton more games to be testing on it and checking out. But yeah, dude, this card is seriously probably, I'm gonna say 95% because I did try Avatar before I took it out, and Avatar, kind of brought it down, and there was a couple more games that kind of brought it down under that 1080p ultra settings. So let's go with 95%. But still, that is still the top performer out of all three of these cards so far in terms of being able to hit that. The AMD Radeon 7800 XT is about 89% so far in my testing. 89%. There's been some games that have like kind of brought it to its knees and not let it, kind of perform at the ultra settings and stuff over 60 FPS without using like ray tracing and stuff. And I've seen like the natural progression of these two cards. When it comes to that, the 7800 XT is still a very solid card, but when you turn on like FSR or any of that other stuff, you definitely get your performance back, and the image quality is sustainable through and through. Plus, this card here does push into 4K on a significant amount of games, and it runs very fine with those games at like at like not having to use upscaling and having to use upscaling. It is pretty much able to play almost every single thing I've thrown at it at 4K. And then the 7900 XT is probably, and you guys are going to be a little bit mad, but this card is more like around 70% when it comes to 4K. It absolutely smashes 1440p, no problem. But if it is in the 4K bracket, it is in the 4K GPU bracket. So I would say it's about 70%. When you're looking at that, if you're buying that card for 1440p at the new price of like 750 or 709 or whatever, absolutely destroys 1440p, and probably you won't need another card for a very long time if you're buying it for 1440p. If you're buying it for 4K, you're gonna be able to get there with your FSR or your upscalers or whatever else, maybe lowering some settings or something, playing around with things to make it get there. But you can definitely get to 4K fairly easy with that card, but it is a monster at 1440p. Usually pretty close. But here's the kicker, man. Here's the absolute kicker. If you are on a budget and you want a 1440p card that's strong and it's gonna do, It's sometimes it's pretty close between that 7800 XT and that 1440 and that 7900 XT in terms of performance, or just being just under, or just, you know what I mean, just slightly under. And that to me right there kind of signals that, like, you might be better off with a 7800 XT this generation, and maybe wait to see, what's going on down the road. The 7900 XT is absolutely a beast. It is a monster at 1440p, and it plays games like Avatar like no problem at 1440p using all the ray tracing and everything. It absolutely smashes. It absolutely smashes everything I've thrown at it at 1440p. But then at the same time, the 7800 XT absolutely smashes everything that I've thrown at it at 1440p, except for a few games that you have to start using the upscaler on. Whereas on the 7900 XT, you don't necessarily have to use the upscaling on those to get an over 60 FPS frame rate for that. So here's my recommendation for you, and this is taking into account the new pricing for the 7900 XT. I still believe that the 7800 XT is probably going to give you more bang for your buck this generation than the 7900 XT or the 7600 XT when it comes to 1440p gaming. Now, the 7600 XT will get you into 1440p gaming. It will. And it does a fairly decent job at it. You will be using your FSR or anything like that. So if that's something that you, as a gamer, are okay with, and you're okay with using upscalers and frame generation and all of that stuff, absolutely, that card for $349.99 for the model that I bought will absolutely give you a 1440p experience, as well as a dang good, like pretty solid 1080p experience, like no problem, without having to use upscalers. Like that is incredible for that price value, in my opinion. But if we talk about ray tracing, if ray tracing is important to you and you're on the 1440p spot, then yes, maybe the 7900 XT is actually a little bit better for that, because it does in fact do ray tracing better than the 7800 XT, but it's not like night and day. It's not like night and day. So, I mean, at the end of the day, my recommendation for the AMD stack for the 7000 series is going to be the 7800 XT. That is the card that I easily recommend. If you are somebody that doesn't have that extra $150, that just can't do it, you don't have the monitor, you don't have, like the power supply or anything like that, because you are going to need at least 750 watts for the 7800 XT, and it drops down to like 600 or something, like a 600 watt PSU for the 7600 XT, but you need over, I mean, for the 7900 XT, it says 750, but I'm running it with a 1000 watt power supply. I don't think I would recommend anything under that for a 7900 XT. So you're definitely going to want to take a lot of that into consideration. And if you're like a 600 watt power supply and you just want 1440p gaming, or you just want, like solid 1080p, absolutely, the 7600 XT is your card. Like, it does do a dang good job at 1440p. I mean, I've even had games like Tekken 8 running at 4K 60 on the 7600 XT. So, and it does do other games at 4K as well. Like, it will. Most of them are about 4K 40. 4K 30. I mean, if you want like console level experience at 4K 30 or whatever, 4K 40, then yes, the 7600 XT is probably your card. But yes, it does deliver on the 1440p. It does deliver on the 1080p. Like, no problem. I don't have any issues with that at all. In terms of like having it, and using it, I think it's pretty solid. The 7800 XT is pretty much my favorite, to be completely honest with you. The 7800 XT is my favorite GPU. It's got enough power. It lets me go from a quality 1440p experience over to 4K. Lets me dabble in 4K. Lets me have a good experience at 4K, especially, and it delivers a decent enough frame rate at both 1440p. 1080p and 4K, to where I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty good. I get a good experience, and that's, at the end of the day, that's pretty much, as PC gamers, what we want. It does do high frame rates on Call of Duty. It does, you know, high frame rates on a lot of them other esports type games, as does the 7900 XT. But in my opinion, for 1440p, I kind of feel right now at this juncture, with all the games that I've tested so far, I kind of feel like the 7900 XT, unless you're gonna invest in a really good CPU, is a little bit overkill for 1440p in the long run. I do find myself getting bottlenecked pretty often with that. You know, usually running at like 80% GPU utilization on a lot of these games. So in my opinion, whereas the 7800 XT runs a lot better with this 5900X that I got. Like this is, I think a lot of it comes down to that between the 7800 XT and my 5900X, that feels like the most optimized experience that I have with any of these cards. Actually, you know, the 7600 XT is doing really good with that GPU, with that CPU as well. But I do need a little bit more power. I mean, clearly I'm not going to choose my 7600 XT over my 7800 XT in terms of like what it can do, just because I like that extra power. I like being able to push into 4K with more games, and not be, you know, constantly tied to like the 40-50 FPS range that the 7600 XT is going to have me at. Whereas with the 7800 XT, I feel like it's the most versatile card in the AMD stack right now. It does 1080p great, it does 1440p great, and it also does 4K pretty dang well enough to be like, okay, yeah, I can get a 4K experience on a lot of this stuff, you know, adjusting some settings, maybe playing with some FSR and things like that. So yes, in my recommendation, I do recommend the 7800 XT as the best bang for your buck GPU this generation. I just don't think that the 7900 XT is I don't think it's that much better at 1440p. I mean, it is a monster and it does do a dang good job, but I just don't think that, like, most people that want a GPU just to play video games, I just don't think that it's a bigger card. It's massive. It does it, you know, it uses more power, stuff like that. So there's like the pros and the cons when it comes to the 7900 XT versus the 7800 XT. But I do think that the longevity of the 7900 XT is going to last longer. You're going to be playing with that GPU for a lot longer. I don't know, man. This is a hard recommendation to make, but I think that the best bang for your buck is 7800 XT, especially this generation for these GPUs. I feel like a $500 GPU for 1080p, 1440p, and entry level 4K gaming is probably the best to satiate most gamers' needs. And you know, in esports titles, it does really well. Buying a 7900 XT over the 7800 XT is probably it's more showing off. You're like, yeah, man, I got money type deal, and that's not really necessary. But at the end of the day, I do think that all three of these cards are definitely at least worth your consideration. So, all right, my friends, if you like this content, do not forget to like and subscribe, my friends. And I'll see you guys in the next one. I just want you guys to know that this channel is pretty much going to just cover AMD. I will be offloading that 4070 pretty soon. Actually, Tuesday, I've already got it set up to go meet with the guy that I usually sell the GPUs to, and I'm going to go ahead and let him go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and let him take that off my hands, and we're just going to cover AMD because I'm getting tired of the toxicity when it comes to that stuff, and I don't have nothing to prove to anybody. I'm very happy with my AMD experience, so that's where we're going to keep it. And all right, man. I think we can do this. So we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.